Kai had exactly 3 bags, 1 broken suitcase wheel, and 0 plans to fall in love. He dragged his luggage up the stairs of Building C, sweating through his shirt, counting the steps out loud to distract himself from the heat. Room 304, third floor, new city, new start. He had told himself that 50 times on the train ride here, like a mantra that would eventually start feeling true. The door to the apartment was already slightly open. He knocked anyway. Hello? I'm the new roommate. Kai? The landlord said. The door swung open before he finished his sentence, and Kai forgot what words were for a second. The guy standing there was tall, with dark, messy hair and a jaw that looked like someone had drawn it with a ruler. He was wearing a plain white shirt and holding a coffee mug, looking mildly annoyed in the way only truly beautiful people can look annoyed and still seem interesting. You're late, the guy said. The train was delayed, Kai said, by 40 minutes. I know. I checked. The guy stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in, I'm Ren. The apartment was small but clean. A narrow hallway opened into a living room, with a gray couch, a wooden coffee table with a scratch along one side, and a window that looked out onto the street below. The kitchen was to the left, and Kai could already see someone standing at the stove. That's Seo, Ren said, nodding toward the kitchen. Seo turned around, and Kai had the sudden, ridiculous thought that the universe was not being fair to him at all. Where Ren was sharp and quiet looking, Seo was warm. Bright eyes, an easy smile, the kind of face that made you want to tell it your problems. He was shorter than Ren by a few inches, wearing an apron that said, World's Okayest Chef, and he had a small smear of tomato sauce on his cheek that he clearly did not know about. Hey, you made it, Seo said, like Kai was a friend he had been waiting for and not a stranger who had answered a room listing online. You hungry? I made pasta. There's enough for 3. Yeah, sure, Kai said. Thank you. He told himself. The warmth he felt in his chest was just gratitude. He was very wrong. Dinner was both comfortable and strange. Ren sat across from Kai and mostly ate without talking. But he asked 1 or 2 sharp questions that showed he had actually been listening the whole time. Seo talked enough for both of them, asking Kai about his job, his hometown, whether he liked dogs or cats, what his opinion was on whether cereal counted as soup. It does not count as soup, Kai said firmly. Seo pointed his fork at him. Wrong answer, but I respect the confidence, Ren said without looking up. He's right. It's not soup. Seo gasped like he had been betrayed at the highest level. You only say that because he's new, and you're trying to be nice. I'm never nice, Ren said flatly. Seo turned to Kai. He's lying. He's actually very nice. He just makes it as difficult as possible for anyone to notice. Ren stood up and took his plate to the sink. Kai watched him go and then looked back at Seo, who was smiling at Ren's back with this soft, quiet look that made Kai feel like he was watching something private. Oh, he thought. They're together. Of course they were together. It was obvious once you saw it. The easy way they moved around each other, finishing each other's sentences without thinking. The way Seo's eyes followed Ren across the room like he could not quite help it. They were together and comfortable and completely at home with each other. Kai picked up his fork and looked at his pasta. Good, he told himself. That makes things simple. They have each other. You're just the roommate. Stay in your lane. He finished his dinner, helped wash the dishes, and said goodnight. He unpacked 2 bags and left the third one for tomorrow. He lay down on a bed that smelled like fresh sheets and stared at the ceiling. From down the hall, he could hear Seo laughing at something, low and genuine, and then Ren saying something too quiet to make out. Kai pulled his pillow over his face. Staying in his lane was going to be the hardest thing he had ever done. 1 week in, Kai had already learned the rules of the apartment without anyone writing them down. Ren used the bathroom first in the morning, always at exactly 6:45, and he was out by 7. Co slept until 7:30 and then spent 20 minutes just sitting in the kitchen, staring at his coffee, before he became a person again. The left kitchen drawer was stuck, and you had to lift and pull at the same time. The shower took 40 seconds to get hot. Do not touch Ren's black notebook on the counter. Do not replace Seo's green tea with any other brand, ever. Kai followed all the rules. He also followed an unofficial rule he had made for himself. Do not stare. It was harder than it sounded. It was not that he was trying to feel something. He was actively, consciously trying not to. But they were right there, all the time. In the small apartment that seemed to get smaller every day, Ren, reading at the kitchen table with his brow slightly furrowed, his fingers wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold because he always forgot to drink it. Seo humming to himself while he cooked, dancing a little when he thought no one was watching, then freezing and going completely still when he caught Kai looking. I wasn't humming, Seo said once. You were, Kai said. Unprovable. Ren did not look up from his book. He was. Seo pointed at both of them. Traitors, both of you. I live with traitors. Kai had laughed and it had felt easy and real, and that was the problem. Everything with these two felt easy and real, and he had not expected that. He had expected awkward roommate energy, polite distance, separate lives in shared space. He had not expected to feel like he belonged here by the end of week 1. On Thursday night, Kai woke up at 2 in the morning because he heard voices. Not loud voices, quiet ones. The kind that come through walls, because whoever is speaking does not realize how thin those walls are. He lay still for a moment, telling himself to go back to sleep, but then he heard his own name. He sat up. Kai seems tired lately, Seo was saying. Have you noticed? A pause. Then Ren's voice, lower and harder to hear. He's adjusting. I know, but still, he barely eats breakfast. He leaves early. You're watching him too closely. A longer pause. Kai held his breath. So are you, Seo said quietly. No answer from Ren. Kai pressed his back against the headboard and stared at the wall between their rooms. His heart was doing something it had no business doing at 2 in the morning. He told himself it meant nothing. They were concerned roommates. Normal concern. He was reading too far into a 2-sentence conversation. He did not sleep again until almost 4. The next day was a Friday, and Fridays were grocery days. Kai had started coming along after week 1 because Seo always bought things he did not need and forgot things he did, and Ren walked too fast and got frustrated, and that made Seo sulk for 10 minutes. Kai had somehow become the middle ground, the one who held the list and read it out loud, and stopped both of them from arguing over which pasta shape was correct. At the store, Seo disappeared toward the snack aisle with absolute purpose, and Kai found himself standing next to Ren in the produce section, both of them staring at tomatoes. He always does this, Ren said, not sounding particularly bothered. Every time, Kai agreed. Ren picked up a tomato, looked at it, put it back. You're not sleeping well. It was not a question. Kai looked at him. I'm fine, Kai said. Your eyes look tired. Thank you, that's very comforting. Ren glanced at him sideways. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but something in that direction. It wasn't meant to be comforting. It was an observation. Very helpful observation, Kai said. 5 stars. This time Ren did smile, just barely, just for a second. Kai looked away and picked up a tomato like it was suddenly very interesting. His chest was doing the thing again. He put the tomato in the basket and walked away. At the end of the aisle, he turned back for a second, just to check if Ren was still standing there. Ren was already looking at him. They both looked away at the same time. Seo appeared from around the corner, holding 3 bags of chips. Okay, I know what you're going to say, and the answer is all 3. Kai laughed. Ren sighed. And for 1 second, standing under the fluorescent lights between the tomatoes and the pasta, Kai thought, I am in so much trouble. It rained for 3 days straight in the middle of Kai's 3rd week. The city went gray and quiet, the way it does when the weather decides everyone needs to slow down, whether they want to or not. Kai worked from home on those days, sitting at the little desk in his room with his laptop and his headphones and his very sincere attempts to focus on his actual job instead of the sound of Seo singing badly in the kitchen. On the 2nd night of rain, the power went out. It came back in about 40 minutes, but for those 40 minutes, the 3 of them ended up sitting on the living room floor, with candles Seo had found at the back of a drawer, playing a card game that none of them fully remembered the rules of. I'm pretty sure you can't do that, Kai said. You're pretty sure, Seo said, laying down his card. Not fully sure. Fully sure, Ren said. Seo looked at his card, then at both of them. Okay, but what if I do it anyway, and we just say it's a house rule? That's not how rules work, Kai said. It's exactly how house rules work. House rules. Ren laid down his own card with the calm energy of someone who had already won 3 rounds and knew it. Seo groaned. Kai laughed. The candles threw warm shadows across all of them, and the rain hit the window in a steady rhythm. And Kai thought, I want to remember this night. For no reason. Just this. They played until midnight. Seo made hot chocolate and brought it in 3 mismatched mugs. Ren's had a small chip in the handle. He held it carefully. Kai watched him do it. This small, careful thing, and something in him went soft and quiet. The serious part came later. Seo had gone to bed, and Kai was about to do the same. But Ren was still sitting by the window, looking out at the rain. Kai stopped in the hallway. You okay? He asked. Ren did not answer for a moment. Then he said, I got a call from my father today. Kai stayed where he was. He did not push. Ren seemed like the kind of person who said things in his own time, or not at all. He wants me to come home, Ren said. For good. Take over something. A company thing. He paused. I told him I'd think about it. Will you? Kai asked. Ren looked at him. In the low light, his face was hard to read, but his eyes were not. His eyes looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I don't know yet, Ren said quietly. Kai sat down on the couch, not too close, just present. That sounds heavy. It is. They sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind of silence that feels like company. The rain kept falling. A car moved slowly through the street below. Does Seo know? Kai asked. Ren's jaw tightened, just slightly. Not yet. Kai nodded and did not say anything more. He did not know what Ren needed right now, but he got the feeling that whatever it was not advice. So he just stayed there, in the dark, while the candle on the coffee table burned low, and the rain made its quiet sound against the glass. At some point, Ren said, Thank you. For what? Not asking more questions. Kai smiled at the ceiling. I have plenty of questions. I'm just saving them. Ren made a sound that was almost a laugh. Almost. Kai went to bed that night, feeling something deep and warm and impossible to name. He did not try to name it. He just let it sit there in his chest and breathed around it. In the morning, the rain had stopped and the sun was sharp and new, and Seo made eggs, and Ren sat at the table with his tea, and everything looked normal. Except that when Kai came into the kitchen, both of them looked up at the same time, and both of them smiled, and Kai had to turn to the cabinet and pretend he was looking for a mug so they would not see his face. He stood there for a second, forehead nearly touching the cabinet door. Lane, he told himself. Stay in it. It started with a sound. Kai had been half asleep, the apartment quiet the way it gets after 11 at night, when he heard them talking again. He was not trying to listen. That is the truth. He had his pillow pulled up around his ears, and his eyes closed, genuinely attempting to sleep, when their voices came through the wall. We should tell him, Seo said. Kai went completely still. Not yet, Ren answered. Ren, he's still adjusting. We don't want to make him feel strange about it. A pause. Then Seo quieter. What if he already knows? He's perceptive. He doesn't know, Ren said. And there was something almost careful in the way he said it. And when we tell him together. Not like this. Kai stopped breathing for 3 full seconds. Tell him what? Tell him together? He lay there, his heart loud in the dark room, his brain running in 5 directions at once. What did they need to tell him together? Were they breaking some apartment rule he did not know about? Were they moving? Were they what? His brain offered several answers, each more confusing than the last. He did not sleep well again. The next morning, he studied them over breakfast like he was trying to decode a language. Seo made toast and put a plate in front of Kai without being asked, the way he always did, and Ren sat with his tea and his newspaper, and occasionally made comments about things he read that were so dry they were actually funny. Normal. Everything was normal. Except Kai kept catching them looking at him when they thought he was not noticing. Not in a bad way, not in a worried way, in a way he could not fully describe, except that it made his face feel warm. You're quiet today, Seo said. I'm always quiet. No, you're usually medium quiet. Today you're maximum quiet. Ren said without looking up. Something on your mind? No, Kai said, too fast. Ren looked up. Kai looked at his toast. Just tired, he said. Neither of them pushed it, but he felt their eyes on him for the rest of breakfast. And when he left for work early, he heard CEO say something behind him and Ren answer. And then the door closed and he was in the hallway, breathing the slightly cooler air outside the apartment. He stood there for 10 seconds. Then he went to work and spent the entire day absolutely not thinking about it. The twist came on a Tuesday. Kai came home early because his afternoon meeting was canceled, and he let himself in quietly, not trying to sneak. just tired. He dropped his bag at the door and walked to the kitchen for water. He stopped. Sio and Ren were standing in the kitchen. That was normal. What was not normal was the piece of paper on the table between them and the look on Sio's face. Not his usual brightness, but something worried and tight. They both looked up when Kai walked in. Hey, Kai said carefully. What's that? Sio and Ren exchanged a look. Ren picked up the paper and set it face down on the counter. Lease notice, he said simply. The landlord is raising the rent. Kai blinked. By how much? Sio told him the number. Kai looked at the table. That's a lot. Yeah, Sio said quietly. He was not smiling. This was, Kai realized, the first time he had seen Sio genuinely worried, and it changed the whole feeling of the room. So what does that mean for us? Kai asked. Another look between them. This one longer. We haven't decided yet, Ren said carefully. We might have to look at other options, Sio added, like finding a cheaper place. Or some other arrangement. The word arrangement sat in the air between all three of them. Kai looked from Seo to Ren and back again. They were both watching him with that same careful expression. And he realized suddenly that they were waiting for something, waiting for him to react, waiting to see what he would say. Whatever you two decide, Kai said slowly, just let me know. I don't want to be the reason you're stuck. Sio's expression shifted. Something moved across his face that Kai could not read. You're not the reason we're stuck, he said. You're actually, he stopped. Actually what? Kai asked. Sio opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Ren. Ren said very quietly, not yet. Sio closed his eyes for half a second, like he was summoning patience. Then he smiled at Kai, and it was warm, but it was also slightly sad in a way that made Kai's stomach drop. Never mind, Sio said. We'll figure it out, don't worry. Kai looked at them both for a long moment. Then he nodded, got his water, and went to his room. He sat on the edge of his bed and pressed his hands against his knees and thought, something is happening. Something is going on between the three of us, and I don't know what it is, but I can feel it like pressure in the room, like the moment before rain. What are they not telling me? The weekend arrived like a pause in a sentence. Saturday morning had that slow golden quality where no one was in a rush, and the city outside the window sounded soft. Kai woke up later than usual, lay in bed for a while just listening to the sounds of the apartment. Water running, the smell of coffee reaching him all the way down the hall, Sio's music playing low. He got up and shuffled to the kitchen, in his old sweatshirt, and found both of them already there. Morning, Sio said brightly, sliding a mug toward him before he even reached the counter. Sleep okay? Better, Kai said honestly. Ren looked at him over his own cup. You look less like a tired ghost today. Wow, Kai said. Thank you. That is a compliment I will hold close to my heart. Sio laughed and turned back to the stove. It was a good morning. The kind that happens naturally when people have been living together long enough to stop performing for each other. They ate breakfast slowly, argued about what to watch, settled on a nature documentary that Ren had been wanting to see, and that Sio fell asleep during within 20 minutes. He did not fall asleep all the way. He just sort of leaned sideways until his head was on Ren's shoulder, and Ren let him, adjusting slightly to make the angle better, not taking his eyes off the television. Kai watched this from his end of the couch and felt the familiar ache move through him. He made himself look back at the screen. Then something changed. Halfway through the afternoon, Sio said he was going to the corner store and asked if anyone needed anything. Ren said milk. Kai said he'd come along. They walked down the street together, just the two of them, in the light afternoon sun. It was the first time Kai had been alone with Sio outside the apartment, and he noticed that Sio walked the same way he did everything else, without hurry, looking at things, asking questions. Do you miss your hometown? Sio asked. Sometimes, Kai said, mostly at night. Sio nodded like that made complete sense to him. I missed mine a lot when I first moved here. Ren was already here, so that helped. But still, he paused. Does it feel better, being here? Kai looked at him sideways. Sio was watching the street ahead, expression open and genuine. Yeah, Kai said. Actually, yeah. It does. Sio smiled, and it was the warm one, the real one. And Kai felt something press against the inside of his chest like a hand pushing gently on a door. They reached the store. They found the milk. They stood in the small aisle for a moment too long after, neither of them moving. Kai, Sio said. Yeah? Seo looked at him. His expression had gone serious in a way that made Kai's pulse pick up. I need to say something, Seo said, and I need you to not run away before I finish saying it. Okay, Kai said carefully. Seo opened his mouth. His phone rang. They both looked at it. Ren's name on the screen. Seo answered it, listened for 3 seconds, and his face changed. We'll be right there, he said, and ended the call. He looked at Kai. Ren fell. He's fine, but he was on the stepladder trying to change the light in the hallway and let's go, Kai said. Ren was sitting on the kitchen floor when they got back, holding his right wrist, looking deeply annoyed with himself. It's not broken, he said immediately when they walked in. How do you know? Seo demanded, dropping to his knees in front of him. Because I can move it. That doesn't mean, Kai, is that how it works? Can you still move a broken wrist? Sometimes yes, Kai said, kneeling on Ren's other side. Let me see. Ren held his wrist out with the expression of someone submitting to an inspection they found unnecessary. Kai turned it carefully in his hands, watching Ren's face for pain. Ren's jaw tightened once, but his eyes stayed steady. Not broken, Kai agreed. Probably sprained. You need ice and to stop moving it. Seo made a sound that was both relief and leftover panic. He sat back on his heels and pressed his hands over his face for a moment. You scared me, he said, muffled. I'm fine. Ren said quieter this time. I know you're fine now, Seo. Seo lowered his hands. Ren was looking at him with that expression Kai sometimes caught between them. The one that was too much and too private to watch directly. Kai stood up. I'll get the ice. He went to the kitchen and stood at the freezer for a moment with the door open, letting the cold air hit his face, collecting himself. When he turned around with the ice pack wrapped in a cloth, both of them were looking at him from across the room with the same expression on their faces. Not identical, but the same feeling behind it. Kai crossed the room and handed the pack to Ren, who took it with his good hand. Thank you, Ren said, and it was simple and low, but it landed somewhere it should not have. No problem, Kai said, and sat back down without thinking, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. None of them moved away. Kai figured it out on a Wednesday evening while he was washing dishes. He was not having a dramatic realization. He was just standing at the sink with soap on his hands, listening to Seo tell Ren about his day in the other room, hearing Ren respond in that short, dry way of his, and then hearing Seo laugh. And he realized that the thing he had been feeling for weeks was not one directional. He had been so focused on his own feelings, on managing them and keeping them quiet, that he had not looked clearly at what was in front of him. They were not acting like people who were in love with each other and being polite to the new roommate. They were acting like people who were, what? Waiting for something? Uncertain about something? Both? He thought about all of it. Seo watching him too closely. Ren noticing his tired eyes, the whispers through the wall. Tell him, together. The look on Seo's face at the store, right before his phone rang. The way both of them had watched him with the same expression after Ren's fall. He stood there with soapy hands and the realization settled over him slowly, and then all at once, like stepping out of shade into sunlight. They were not a couple, or they were, but not in the way he had assumed. They were something, yes, something real and close, and with history. But it was not the closed, finished thing he had imagined it was. There was space in it, not empty space. Space that had a shape that looked something like him. Kai turned the tap off and dried his hands very slowly. He went to the living room. Seo was on the couch, legs folded, scrolling through his phone. Ren was reading in the armchair, his sprained wrist resting on his knee, healing. They both looked up. Can I say something? Kai asked. Yes, Seo said immediately, sitting up straighter. Ren set his book down. Kai stood in the middle of the room, feeling very exposed. I heard you two talking, he said, a while ago, through the wall. You said you needed to tell me something together. Neither of them spoke. I've been trying not to think about what it meant, Kai continued. I've been telling myself to stay in my lane, that you two were together and I was just the roommate, and I should just. He stopped, took a breath. But I'm not good at lying to myself, and I don't think you two are either. A long silence. Then Seo said, in a voice that was completely steady and also somehow undone. We're not dating. Kai looked at him. Ren and I, Seo said. We're not together like that. We've been friends since we were 16. We love each other. But not, he glanced at Ren. Not like that, Ren said. His voice was even, but his eyes were not. We've been each other's person for years, but we're not in love with each other. Kai's brain rearranged itself. Then, why did I think? Because we're bad at explaining it to new people, Sio said, and made a face that was almost a smile. We're close, and we've been doing this, the cooking, the routines, all of it, for so long that people always assume. He paused. We should have made it clearer sooner. We were going to. We just. We kept finding reasons not to, Ren said, looking directly at Kai. The room was very quiet. Kai sat down on the couch, suddenly needing to. Okay, he said slowly. Okay. So the thing you wanted to tell me together was that it's not what it looks like, Sio said softly, and that we wanted you to know. He hesitated. Because it matters, you matter. Kai looked at the coffee table. His hands were resting on his knees, and they felt strange, like they were not quite attached to him. Okay, he said again. That's all you're going to say? Sio asked. I need a minute, Kai said. Sio nodded. Ren said nothing. But he did not pick his book back up, and he did not look away from Kai. Kai sat there in the middle of the room, the two of them watching him, and thought about lanes and hearts and the impossible way some things refuse to stay simple. The minute turned into several minutes, then an hour. Co made tea, not because anyone asked for it, just because he needed something to do with his hands. And tea was Co's answer to most situations that required hands. He set 3 mugs on the coffee table and sat back down, and Ren moved from the armchair to the other end of the couch. And now all 3 of them were sitting in a loose triangle, with tea they were not drinking. Say something, Co said to Kai. I'm thinking. Think out loud. That's terrifying. Kai. Kai picked up his mug, put it down, looked at both of them. I spent 3 weeks telling myself not to feel things, he said slowly, because I genuinely thought you two were together. And I thought the most respectful thing I could do was stay out of it. He paused. I was very, very committed to that plan. How was that going? Ren asked, and there was something in his voice that was not quite dry and not quite warm, but lived somewhere in between. Terribly, Kai said honestly. Co made a sound that was half a laugh and half something more fragile. For what it's worth, he said. We were not doing great either. Kai looked at him. Watching you try not to feel things, Co said, while we were also trying not to feel things, was genuinely the most painful month of my life, and I once sprained both ankles at the same time. How did you manage that? Kai asked. It doesn't matter right now. It absolutely matters, and I want to hear about it later. Later, Co agreed, and smiled, and it broke something loose in the room. Ren looked at Kai. Direct, like always, but something different underneath it this time. We weren't sure how you felt, he said. We knew how we felt. We didn't want to make things strange for you if you didn't, if you weren't. I was, Kai said. A pause. Am, he corrected quietly. I am. Co looked at Ren. Ren looked at Kai. Kai looked at the coffee table and then made himself look up. At both of them. Because he had spent 3 weeks not doing that, and he was done with it. What followed was not a dramatic declaration. It was not fireworks. It was actually quite uncertain and slow and real. There were questions. Honest ones. How does this work? What do we all want? What if it gets complicated? What if we get it wrong? Ren said, it will probably get complicated. Co said, yes, but we're already complicated. We might as well be complicated together. Kai said, I've never, and stopped. Neither have we, Co said gently. Not like this. It was the word together that mattered, not as a promise that everything would be easy. As a direction. As a choice. Kai sat there, with 2 people he had known for less than 2 months, and felt something settle in him like furniture, finding its right place in a room. Not loud, it's not sudden, just right. Finally, quietly right. Okay, he said, for the 3rd time that evening. But this time it sounded different. Like an answer rather than a delay. Co smiled so bright it was almost painful to look at. Ren's expression did not change by much, but his eyes did, and Kai was learning to read what that meant. Co leaned forward and picked up his mug. To terrible ideas that turn out to be good ones, he said. Ren picked up his mug, Kai picked up his. And to thin walls, Kai added. Co choked on his tea. Ren looked at the ceiling like he was asking someone up there for patience, but the corner of his mouth curved up, and Kai saw it, and he thought, I'm going to keep making him do that, every chance I get. 3 months later, they did not move. The landlord raised the rent, and they negotiated, badly, for 2 weeks. And then Seo charmed the building manager into a smaller increase by making him a bento box and listening genuinely to 45 minutes of stories about his late dog, which was either manipulation or kindness, depending on how you looked at it. Both, Ren said. It's called people skills, Seo said. It's called I said. It was both. Ren is right, but you also did a nice thing. They both looked at him. Thank you, Seo said. See, this is why we keep you. I'm not a houseplant, Kai said. No, houseplants don't argue back. You're much more interesting. Ren leaned over and pressed his shoulder briefly against Kai's. No words, just that. Kai had learned that was Ren for I agree, or I like you, or sometimes just I'm here. He had a whole private vocabulary for it now. The apartment was the same. 3 bags still took up one corner of Kai's room, minus the broken suitcase. He had finally replaced it. The kitchen drawer still stuck. The shower still took 40 seconds. Ren's notebook was still on the counter, but something was different in the way they all moved through the space. This, not dramatic, just fuller. Like the apartment had been one thing and was now another, and the change was not in the walls or the furniture, but in the people inside it. Kai sat at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning, with coffee and the sound of the city outside, and Seo appeared from the hallway in a shirt that was definitely Ren's, and started making breakfast without being asked. Ren came in 3 minutes later, stopped, looked at his shirt on Seo, and said nothing, which was its own kind of statement. Kai watched this and smiled at his coffee. What? Seo asked. Nothing. You're smiling. I'm allowed to smile. You're doing the soft smile, Seo said, turning from the stove. The secret one. You know you do that? It's very. He stopped and glanced at Ren. Ren sat down across from Kai with his tea. It's very you, he finished, simply. Kai looked at both of them. These two people, this kitchen, this life that had arrived without his planning, without his permission, and without any care for the lanes he had tried so hard to stay in. I have something to say, he said. Please don't say you're leaving, Seo said immediately. I'm not leaving. Okay, good. What? Kai looked at the table, then back up. When I moved here, he said, I had 3 bags and a broken suitcase wheel, and I told myself I was going to be fine and keep to myself and not feel anything complicated. He paused. I failed at all of those things. Badly, Ren agreed. Very badly, Kai said. And I'm really glad I did. Seo set down his spatula and crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and hugged Kai from behind, his arms around his shoulders, his chin on top of his head. Kai laughed, surprised. Ren watched with an expression that was as close to fond as Ren ever got, which was actually quite fond if you knew how to read it. We're glad to, Seo said, his voice warm against Kai's hair. Ren reached across the table and covered Kai's hand with his own for just a moment. Then he picked up his tea and looked out the window, and that was Ren's version of saying everything. Kai looked around at the kitchen, the chipped mugs, the stuck drawer, the window full of morning light, the 2 people who had somehow, impossibly, become his. He was not the new roommate anymore. He was not someone passing through. He was home.